Hey, all my Cancers, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and I'm here today with your October 2024 monthly horoscope. These horoscopes are based on whole sign Western astrology. So when I'm talking about Cancer, I'm referring to Cancer rising as the first house and dictating the landscape of the chart. This is also applicable to Cancer Sun and Cancer Moons. And if you have 3 or more planets in the sign of Cancer, this video is for you as well. This is an action-packed month. Oh, when I refer to a day and a time, it's based on the Pacific time zone, so please adjust for your location. The month starts off with a bang. We're going to see our last eclipse of 2024. We're going to see Jupiter go retrograde. We're going to see Pluto move direct in Capricorn for the last time for 248 years. It's going to the beginning of the month, as well as trickling through, is going to be very, very powerful. So let's pull up the chart and I'll show you what's going on. All right, so this is October 1st, and we see on the first day of the month, we have the Sun and Mercury conjunct in Libra in a conversation with the South Node. This is very, very powerful because the Sun represents our ego, our how we express ourselves out into the world, or how we're viewed, how people see us out in the world. And then Mercury rules our mind, our everyday thoughts, our communications. It rules the media, information, it rules teaching, it rules the roadways and short-term travel, meaning anything within a few hundred miles. I say all this because this conjunction is going to continue on into the eclipse. So our mind and how we're thinking is very much going to be in our awareness, and we'll have an opportunity to plant the seeds for something very powerful over the next few months. The conversation with the South Node, I think, is significant because the South Node represents a point where we release toxicity. And the sign of Libra in and of itself represents balance, harmony, peace, fairness. This is where we see people in the professions like lawyers or policemen, or civil workers, people who implement balance and cooperation. So this starting of the month is giving me an opportunity to really review how I perceive my ego as it is asserted out into the world, and how my mind works in conjunction with it. And on some level, having to be a bit egoless in willing to release any toxic energies or thoughts or speech that conflicts with what I want to experience. We also see that the Sun and Mercury are in what I would call a loose square. This is a 6-degree square. I like to keep things between 2 and 3 degrees for maximum potency, but this is still a tense conversation. Mars is in your first house. It is in a house where it does not feel comfortable. It's in fall. It is a place where it doesn't necessarily feel respected. Cancer is a very loving, nurturing, compassionate sign in many ways, always wanting to help other people and lift them up. And Mars is a little blunt sometimes, a little too straightforward, a little too, I don't give a what you think. And Cancer doesn't necessarily always appreciate that. So we're having some conflicting energy going on here between, how you are. You could even be having challenges with siblings, workmates, teammates, people within your neighborhood. Mercury rules so many parts of our everyday life, and the interactions on a short-term sort of superficial level. While we know our neighbors, most of us aren't intricately involved with them. And I don't know if most is for the right word. I live in California. We don't interact with our neighbors here much. And please, if you do, tell me I'm wrong. But in any case, so this is just one aspect. Now we have what we see here is a grand trine. Mars is now in a conversation with a retrograde Saturn in Pisces, and this is in a loose trine to Venus. So what we're looking at is your first house is being lit up. We see that Pisces is actually your 9th house of beliefs, and Saturn is revisiting your history of your beliefs, the history of your beliefs in your ability to create the things that you want. And I want to offer it this way because the 9th house rules publishing and writing and branding and wealth and business and commerce. While it rules beliefs and it rules a sense of religion and spirituality and higher education in the form of PhDs and master's programs, here I think this has a lot to do with Cancer really looking at your belief system, revisiting your history and discerning between the beliefs that were given to you and potentially new beliefs. Mars is really powerful in this first house because Mars is wanting to protect the home, wanting to protect the family. But Mars has a tendency to do that in such a harsh way that Cancer is like, no, tone it down. But every once in a while, Mars is right. You got to take action. You have to be a little bit more confident in your position so that you can assert yourself within it. It's a lot going on in this very first day because I think a lot of this has to do with skills and money and how you interact your money. The Scorpio energy is your fifth house. That fifth house is about your enjoyment, about your pleasure, about your hobbies, about your self-expression. It governs the teenage years when we discover romance, and it becomes quite a passionate thing for us as we go into our pubescent years. So here, your pleasure, your enjoyment, your skills in using your talents, and Saturn having this trine here to your belief system gives me an opportunity to think that there are favorable aspects if you, Cancer, are brave about asserting yourself and not looking at Mars as aggressive, but looking at Mars as being pioneering. And so let's go to the next day, because the next day, this will be emphasized by a series of ones. The new moon solar eclipse in Libra happens at 11:49 a.m. Pacific time. And now we see that the sun and the moon have come together in the darkest phase of the moon to create something new. But this is an eclipse, a solar eclipse. So its energy is 10 times more powerful and its reach is further. This manifestation can happen right away, or it could take up to 6 months to reveal itself. We see the 10, it to me represents the number 1 represents my thoughts. So we see Mercury representing thought at 11 degrees, and we see this solar eclipse at 10 degrees. And just because numbers freak me out, I notice now that Venus is at 11 degrees, representing your self-worth in the house that represents for Cancer, pleasure, enjoyment, romance, the conception of children even. And so I think this is a very powerful time for you to give yourself an opportunity. I don't think I mentioned it. Did I say that Libra was your 4th house of home and hearth and family, the house you naturally rule, and yet it squares you in your natal chart? So there is something about a self-nurturing. There's something about being able to express yourself in a way in the home environment that feels authentic to not only your desire to love and care for others, but also to self-nurture. This is very important. And the square to Mars will create a tension because Mars is self-oriented. It is about the self. It's like, I want to discover the self. It's the head. It's the athlete who wants to discover the prowess within their physical apparatus. So this is a little bit challenging, but at the same time, it offers so many opportunities. Now, I've been talking, if you've been watching me for a while, about Pluto. Pluto is going to have a continued conversation with Uranus and with Neptune. And these are going to stay in sextile and trine. So Taurus is your 11th house of hopes and dreams, of innovation, of the 2.0 version, of the World Wide Web, of the cosmic consciousness. Now, Capricorn is your 7th house of partnerships. And then Pluto will move in November into your 8th house of transformation. It's also the house of other people's money, the house where your willingness to step into Mars's opportunity to be brave about asserting yourself and the things that Venus transiting your 5th house will give you opportunities moving forward. Let me be more clear. If you want to have a child, if you want to conceive some sort of creative endeavor for pleasure or even for performance, then this is supported by the trine between Venus. Let me click off of this real quick. Between Venus and Mars and Saturn. Now, Pluto here is asking you very much, how do you think about these things? This Cancerian energy in your seventh house is all about cooperation. It is a house that represents the Libra energy, the energy of peace and harmony. And when we are feeling purposeful as an individual, it gives us more energy to be loving and nurturing to others. The 29 also reduces down to an 11. So now we're seeing the solar eclipse is at 10 degrees. Mercury is at 11 degrees. Venus is at 11 degrees. Pluto reduces down to an 11. And Neptune at 28 degrees retrograde, it reduces down to a 10. This is very much about planting the seeds for new thoughts that support the experience you want to have. Pluto trining Uranus in your 11th house of hopes and dreams, liberating you in many ways from what could potentially have been tethering you to a smaller story of yourself. This is so powerful because not only are we going through individual transformations, but the environment around us is going through transformations. The world at large is going through a restructuring. And as we become aware that our thoughts are things, we tend to experience things from a different place. We can thrive in times that are challenging for others because we have harnessed the awareness of our thoughts and the law of attraction and the law of ebb and flow. So when things aren't moving effortlessly, it signals us to slow down. What am I thinking about? What am I focusing in on? And then allowing a divine inspiration to lead me to the next action. All right, that's the eclipse and the last eclipse of the year. So it'll be May. No, I'm sorry. It'll be Aries season by the time we figure out what this actual planting what the harvest will be. So this is kind of exciting because it'll be focused on the self and being a hero in your own life. All right, let's go now. I'm going to go back to 12 o'clock. Hopefully that's right. And I'm going to go to the 7th where Venus enters into a stronger trine. I should actually go back a day. Let me go back one day. I'm missing it a little bit. I think this trine is very important because this is where the woman and the man are coming together in harmony in some way. And while Saturn is still in effect here, I think Saturn now is giving an opportunity through this cooperative, tight, yin and yang sort of energy. I'm willing to assert myself to know that I can receive and I can conceive. There's something very much right now that's feeling like the conception is not just of another human being, but of a new dynamic for Cancer, something that feels like you're birthing either a dream baby or something that you've wanted for a long time. And as you stay the course of holding on to how that feels, it starts to manifest itself in increments. And Saturn is going to help you anchor in now to your spiritual dynamic, which would be meditation, prayer, affirmations, vision boards, however you enjoy your rituals. On the 9th, we will see Jupiter go retrograde in Gemini. Gemini is your 12th house, the house that holds your karmic imprint, the house that holds your soul's Akashic records in some ways. So this would very much be about information. It would be about interactions with others within your community, your siblings, but a lot of it will have to do with how you think, how you speak, how your self-talk supports what it is that you want. Jupiter will retrograde from October 9th, 2024 until February 4th, 2025. And its shadow period, which is where the planet is really sort of still in slower motion and gaining speed, is until April of 2025. So this is important. Jupiter will retrograde from 21 degrees back to 11 degrees. There's that 11 again, where the idea that thoughts are things, Gemini rules thoughts. Even if you think about it, an 11 in Roman numerals looks like the symbol for Gemini. So you're going to be rethinking a lot of your history in how you've interacted with others, how the relationships have been give and take. Have they been deep enough for you? Have they provided you with the kind of experiences you've wanted to have? And they could call forth a shifting in your belief and an opportunity for you to be more curious about things that you are not familiar with. We see that right now, Jupiter, when it starts, it's stationed in the sky, which means that it's sort of standing there with more power, like the hands on its hips. And there's a blindsided quincunx to Venus. And I think what this is telling me is that there's a part of you that is not aware of your talents, not aware of your expansion, that you can't see it with your eyes, Cancer. You can't hear it right now. You can't taste it with your physical senses. This is somewhere you're going to have to pull yourself into your heart chakra and then anchor into that inner knowing that Cancer is so good at. Very intuitive sign. We see this nice trine to Mercury, specifically loose trine to the sun, but this is supporting this thinking in a more harmonious, balanced way. Now, interestingly enough, we were just experiencing that square to Mars. So, it could be potentially that something that gets you a little bit hot or a little bit steamy is the epiphany that helps you shift into a new belief or into the openness of a new belief, a new experience, an expanded thought. Now, I do have to say that we have quite a few planets in challenge right now. We have Mars in your first house, which is in fall. We have Jupiter in detriment. We have Venus in detriment. We have the sun in fall. These are all things where the planets are not at their highest energy, but rather they're sort of struggling to find their balance, struggling to find their voice within that environment. So being patient with yourself and taking things incrementally. And I want to go back to the Saturn in Pisces. The very much spirit has shown me that Saturn in Pisces right now is about establishing a firm foundation and building a firm structure with my spiritual practices. So that's what this has to offer as you move through these energies. Let's go now to the 11th. The first part of the month is quite changed. The energies change quite a bit. Let me go a little, I'll go to the, I'll have to go a little bit further. Let me go to, oh, I know what I was saying. I'm sorry, pardon me. Let me go to the 11th when we go from a retrograde Pluto to Pluto moving forward. Now, again, this motion is slow, and Pluto's already slow, but this is sort of a standing in the sky, going from one direction to another. Now, when we look very closely, we can see that this starts at 29 degrees, 38 minutes. This reduces down to 4 ones, 2 11s. Just banging for me even further that, as we move into this Aquarian age, we're going to understand how important our thoughts are. So you're going to experience going from this Pluto sort of reconstructing how you have interacted. And you may have inadvertently been in professional relationships or in marriage partnerships that were not highly emotional, but also you could be doing things out of duty and obligation rather than joy and fun. And this Aquarius is going to give you a 2.0 version, an opportunity to not rebel per se, but to rewrite through a bit of rebellion, Mars in your first house, how this next, decade or two is going to look as you move forward in that 8th house of transformation. Because you could find yourself birthing something creatively that ends up being something other people love, and you gain resources from it. Money, who knows what it could be. It really depends on you and what you're endeavoring right now. Okay, let's move now to the 13th, where we will see, oh, not yet. Let me go to the 14th. Mercury has moved into Scorpio. Now, this is very significant for me because this, when we get to 2 degrees of Scorpio, we have the Shapley attractor. This is a point in the sky where we are offered an opportunity to release false attachments. And it's in the sign of Scorpio because often we are attached to people because they provide money, they provide intimacy, or we offer intimacy in exchange for security. There's an exchange of resources in the Scorpio energy, but it is not balanced energy. There's somewhere where there's power and dominance. And so here you're getting an opportunity to really release any sort of false thoughts about the power of the audience, how much control you'll have over the viewpoint of what you birth. Even if you birth a child, you would, you only have so much control over that child before they're their own little human making their own decisions and out in the big bad world by themselves. So this gives you a real opportunity to be more aware of your thoughts. And as you're aware of them, be willing to recognize the thoughts that don't serve you and then move away from those thoughts. It's almost like worry is a form of prayer that doesn't serve me. It puts my attention and my intention in the experience I don't want. So now I'm going to recognize worry. And when it starts to come in, I'm going to affirm my faith. I'm going to, connect with my team and affirm that they are supporting me and the experience I want to have. Super, super powerful time. Can't even begin to say how powerful it is. Now we're going to go to my birthday, October 17th, and we have a full moon at 4:26 a.m. I'm hoping this is going to be a better birthday than last year and the culmination of something. But a full moon, as we know, is the brightest phase of the moon, where something comes into our awareness that either brings an ending of something, draws a conclusion. And I say that from the mind. Oh, I have this data now. I can draw a conclusion and thereby take more action. We also, there's also this idea of some sort of illumination, epiphany of some kind. The moon is conjunct Chiron, and this is in Aries, which is your 10th house of career. This sort of echoes back to me to the energy that's going on in your 5th house. Venus's transit there, giving you an opportunity to think about your creativity, what you want as far as feminine receptive energy in a give and take way. And while the moon is conjunct Chiron, this could inadvertently, because you are ruled by the moon, stoke fears of your individuality. That if I individualize myself too much, I will pay a price with my public reputation. Like I'm not a good enough parent, or I'm not nurturing enough, or I'm not whatever I personally identify with in my Cancer energy, because Cancer is also a very strong healing energy. It could also reference how you feel about your roots of origin, your homeland, because the Cancer rules the home and hearth, including the countries we are all born in. This is also, I'm going to click on the sun right now, but we are seeing a T-square. The moon is making a square to Pluto. Pluto is making a square to the sun, and the sun is in opposition to the moon. A T-square makes a focal point of the planet at the apex, and that would be Pluto. Again, emphasizing we still have this 29-38 degrees, meaning 29 degrees, 38 minutes of Capricorn, which is reducing down to 2/11s. So again, this is a reconstruction of my thinking process, and in relation to governments and authorities, or fears and depression, limitation, obligation, restriction, and also an opportunity to build. Now, while we have a T-square to Pluto, okay, we also have a T-square to Mars in your 1st house. So this is just, I can't remember. It's like a grand square. I know the term, but it escapes me in this moment. But this push-pull between Mars and Pluto, while this is not tight yet, it will get tighter as the month progresses. But the opposition is really about action and an awareness of a psychological noose, a psychological chain, a psychological handcuff of some kind. And there could strongly be an awareness that you've been operating on an emotional dynamic that may be extinct or it's expired, and your habit of being is no longer serving you. So if you're over loving, over giving, over compensating, it's not going to work. So that's why the Mars and Pluto, they're going to be self-centered. Mars and Pluto are going to say, focus on yourself a little bit. And when you do that, you have no idea how that can open up your world, because there we see a nice sextile to Uranus, offering that liberation in your 11th house of hopes and dreams. And then we see the trine to Neptune in Pisces in your 9th house of beliefs. So this is a very, very powerful illumination. And I want to offer this because it may have something to do with the eclipse. The eclipse is planting the seeds, and the illumination may be where you see a direction to go, or the writing is on the wall in some way. Somebody's just never going to change. My boss is never going to appreciate me. My kids need, blah, blah, blah. But I also need this. Something's going to come up. All right, let's move on to, Venus moves into Sagittarius on this day as well. And let me move later in the day. She likes to be in Sagittarius, Venus. She feels warm and fuzzy there. She's been in one of her good friends. She's, Jupiter and Venus like each other. They also have a little bit of a moment, but they, for the most part, they like each other. So as she moves into Sagittarius, she gets very inspired. And this is your 6th house of work. This is your 6th house of health. This is your 6th house of your pets. It's also the house of our mental stress from our everyday life. So there's an opportunity through Venus's new sense of self that you'll start to feel more empowered in this energy. I also want to comment that Venus is now going to transit mostly in November, but she's going to transit over the Great Attractor, and she's going to transit over this galactic center. And as she does that, there's an opportunity to start to attract the resources that you need from the outside world, and then the information downloaded from the universe, inspirations, I like to call them, while this transit takes place, or while this goes on. We also see that Mercury was just conjunct the Shapley attractor, but I've already been over that, so I'm not going to revisit that, because this would be, again, releasing false attachments in the mind, false thoughts, thoughts that don't serve me, thoughts that have held me back. Okay, now let's go to the 22nd, when the sun will enter Scorpio. And here now the sun gets its turn. The thing about Venus and Mercury is they're never more than 2 planets away, or 2 signs away from the sun. So there's always sort of this transit that happens in waves. So first, we see Venus looking at herself and her self-worth and her ability to make money. And then we examine that with our everyday thoughts and how we're interacting. And now the sun is giving us an opportunity to start to see, how do I want to express myself? How do I want to project myself, my ambitions, my ego, my leadership? This is entering your 5th house. So this is important because you, Cancer, are getting an opportunity to release any false attachments that you are not good enough, you're not strong enough, you're not fertile enough, meaning not just fertile to have babies, but to create anything you want, money, resources. This is for men and women. So this house of creation has no definition to it other than the Scorpio energy. You could be very good with money. You could be a great surgeon in the 5th house of Scorpio. You could be a sex therapist. You could be great in bed. It's all those things. Okay, let's go on to the 25th. Pardon me. Until the end of the month, we're going to experience Venus in a pretty tight square. Let's look at this with Saturn. Now, okay, let me click on this. This is going to grow throughout the month. But what's important, I think, about this square is that as Venus starts to transit and she gets to 14 degrees of Sagittarius, she is on the great attractor. And the square is going to tell her inadvertently, Pisces being your ninth house, that you have to follow the rules of the earth. And Venus in this moment is going to ask you to follow the rules of spirit, to, be aware of your spiritual practices, your self-talk. This square and a half to Mars now is a little bit challenging because this is, again, kind of rubbing up against I want to say your fear of asserting yourself, of getting mad, of having people, punish you for having distasteful emotions. But on some level, in order to get what you want, it's about being a little bit egoless to their opinion in this moment and being a little bit more assertive about what it is that you really, really want. And I do think that this has to do with how people view you out in the world. The 10th house is not just your career ambitions, it's your public status. So if you go from having no children to having children, or from being, a single person to a parent, the 10th house would reflect that. A marriage would be reflected. A large job change would be reflected in that. But this is about you asserting yourself into being brave about what you want. So I think as the month ends out, the square between Venus and Saturn is going to reveal to you how much you respond to what is expected of you, to your obligations, to your duty. And it may inadvertently flare up annoyance and anger and make you feel like no one in your home is even, cares about what you need. But it's important for you to address your needs so that you don't need to look to others, but rather stand a little bit autonomously that way. So then when you all come together, you become a machine that knows how to self-care and or self-soothe, as they say, and also nurture others. I think this is really, really important. I say that a lot, though, because I think we're living in very, very powerful times. Now, the other thing I want to mention, because I'm really into these transit yods lately, I notice now that Mercury in your fifth house is in a transit yod to Jupiter retrograde and Chiron. Anytime you see two quincunxes coming together at an apex within 1 to 2 degrees, it's called the finger of God, or a yod. I call them transit yods because at this time you're having an opportunity to really, God is giving you an opportunity to kill old thoughts that don't serve you. And as we go through the next few days and Mercury gets to that 20th degree and becomes, literally the exact focal point, this broadening of your belief system and being willing to transform your wound into a gift, meaning knowing how to trust those intuitive hits. Because right now the moon is here, the moon's going to move very quickly, but this is really what it's about, is trusting your intuitive hits over the everyday thoughts that rule me, the everyday obligations that rule me, and also to trust a little bit about those creative thoughts and inspirations that come through and start putting some real spit and polish on those, meaning putting some, if you're inspired to go into a meditation to thank God for creating a book, creating a child, creating a new job, then taking a few moments to do that. And if you could add water into it somehow, do that in the shower, listen to water of some kind, be around water, that would be very good for you, Cancer, because you respond very well to that. All right. This is getting a little long. I didn't want it to be quite so long. Let's go to the 31st, and we'll just look at how the month wraps up. And here, it's interesting because Mars has been squaring a lot of energies and been kind of mucking it up a little bit as it's been going through your first house, because now Mars is squaring the moon. Here we see the moon's going to move very quickly, but the moon ruling you this last day of the month could make you acutely aware of things that you habits, traditions, and things that you implement, but you do them out of a habit. It almost feels like you do them for other people more than you do them for yourself. And we see a really tight opposition between Mars and Pluto. This is going to feel very challenging because it's calling forth for a little bit of an assertive energy when it comes to actually allowing for the transformation. And again, here we see Mars is at 28 degrees, Pluto's again still at 29 degrees, And that's representative of those ones, that thought. And the 27th degree is the Gemini degree of thoughts. So, and look, even Neptune is at the Gemini degree. So I think that the month sort of ends a little bit challenging because there is this feeling of, and we are getting very close to the presidential election in the United States, which could very much be creating tension. The United States is a Cancer energy, Cancer sun, and this transit's been going through that house which is the 8th house for the United States. So really calling forth a look at how we address our anger. Anyway, that's it for me. Let me stop sharing my screen. All right, my Cancers, thank you so much for listening. Please like, please subscribe, please share. Again, my name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer. I do intuitive readings as well as intuitive astrology readings. If you'd like to book something with me, my information is below in the description. I'll be back in November with your November monthly. The times are only going to get more exciting and a little bit more, require us to have a little bit more awareness and intention. So thank you so much again for listening. I'll see you next month.